Good evening, gentlemen. PS, I would request you to start the session.
Hi.
Good afternoon, Mr. Salman.
Afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon, Paneer. How are you?
Good, good. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. We have our Aditya has also joined the call. Hi,
Okay.
Aditya.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Hi, Aditya. Very good afternoon.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah. Good afternoon, everybody. This is Aditya from HDFC.
Hi, very good afternoon, everybody. This is Puneet from Kaleido.
Mr. Aditya, if you could kind of place your camera a little bit. Yeah, that is better. Thank you so much, sir. Okay. Shankar?
Yeah, PS.
You have to tell me when we can go.
Yeah, we can go ahead, PS. You're already.
Great. Let's go live. Shankar.
Yeah, we are live now. Please go ahead.
Very good afternoon to the entire panelists and all the participants who are joining us on the second panel discussion on Confluence 2022 in its first edition. Thank you so much, all of you joining us, both the panelists as well as the audience who are listening in to us. So we have number is quickly growing, and it's nice to see a lot of people participating in this event. Today we are actually going to discuss a very interesting topic about role of corporates in funding startups or financing startups for that matter, and what kind of pros and cons that this has, and how this is going to benefit the startup ecosystem. And hubHyd, we are extremely proud of connecting corporates to startups and vice versa for all possible strategic collaborations. As you may have understood, Confluence, it's an opportunity to kind of collaborate and co-create, and that is essentially the whole purpose of this event. And since morning, I'm happy to share almost 40 plus corporates we have listened to almost another 45 plus startup pitches, and they've been engaging and interacting since afternoon. So in that context, thank you so much, all the gentlemen who are on the panel. I'll quickly introduce myself, Paneer Selvam. I head the corporate innovation part for business for hubHyd, and this is we have a team who exclusively work with corporates, enabling their open innovation journey. And I have also with me on this panel, Mr. Kushal Kumar Banerjee, the Chief Regional Manager of HPCL, one of India's largest petroleum company. And thank you so much for joining us this afternoon, sir. It's to have you on this panel. And Mr. Kushal brings with him over 30 plus years of experience in the oil and gas business, and he's been in pretty much 33 decades of experience. I'm sure he has been in almost all the departments, and including strategy and in terms of driving the whole e-mobility space, e-mobility initiatives in the organization now. So Kushal is also an alumni of IIT, and he's also worked with other research bodies and A.T. Kearney and Frost and Sullivan. He's been in this business for a while. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon, Mr. Kushal. With our second panelist for this afternoon, I take again it's a pleasure to introduce Mr. Aditya Jha, Vice President and Head of Business Banking Group from HDFC Group. Again, he takes care of Telangana and Andhra Pradesh region for business banking. Thank you so much, Mr. Aditya, joining us this afternoon. And the third, but another dimension to this whole conversation is Puneet Gupta, co-founder Calidofin. Is a startup representing the it's a very indeed a very interesting representation that has kind of come together. So we have Mr. Kushal from the corporate side, we have Mr. Aditya from the banking side, and we have Mr. Puneet from the startup side. So the two types of lenders or investors and a startup who's at the receiving end also are here to kind of take this conversation forward. Great. So thank you so much, gentlemen, once again for joining. With that, I would like to kind of kickstart the topic, as you all know, is corporate funding for startups and what exactly the corporates are, looking in it, and what is in it for them, and how startup ecosystem can leverage from both corporates and banking, investing or funding the startup ecosystem. So the way we will structure this is kind of, we can kind of go around with a couple of minutes of opening remarks, and then we can steer this discussion, and then I have a set of queries to ask all of you, and then we eventually open up for a audience Q&A, and we already have 100+ audience there. So we would ensure that we can take a few questions and get on answering them as well. Is that okay with you all?
Yeah, it's
fine. Thank you. So if I can start with you, Mr. Kushal, we know HPCL has been, investing, or is keen to invest in startups. So if you can open this conversation by letting us know, sir, what are corporates? Why are corporates in this space? And what is the trend like? And then how do we what is it really shaping up like in this corporate funding startups? Sir?
At the outset, thank you very much, Mr. Selvan, for inviting HPCL and representing HPCL for this conference. And recently I had visited your TAB also, and it was a very nice experience to see the startups and the young entrepreneurs working there with their novel ideas and inputs. So many things had come out that time also. So as you're all aware, startup ecosystem is doing great in India right now. And in fact, we have got over 61,000 startups, registered startups in India, spread across 635 districts. If you talk about startups, all the 30 states and UTs have one registered startup at least in India, and they've got their own startup policies. And everywhere you can see the startup flourishing, and it is moving away from the metros. Like earlier, we used to have Delhi, Bangalore, and Mumbai, all those areas, but it's moving away to tier 2, tier 3 cities. It's a very good sign. In fact, seeing, the number of startups which is there right now, it is there in Jaipur, almost 440 startups, Ahmedabad, 460 startups, Indore, Hyderabad, Pune, all are emerging as startup hubs. And that's a great sign. And as we are all aware, what is happening in the Indian startup system, we've had 43 unicorns coming in. Startups with more than 1 million valuation last year. And if you talk about these startups, their valuation is almost 260 billion. And today, the 83 unicorns what we have in India. And we are the third largest startup hub in the world next 2 years in China. So it's a great thing and a big opportunity for the young entrepreneurs, what is happening. As regards funding is concerned and the capital, those areas are concerned, it is flushed with fund, in fact, right now, startup ecosystem. And capital has become a sort of commodity now. The way it is happening in 2022, it has become that. And the founders have a choice now to whether to get it from locally or internationally. It is there with them. In fact, I was looking to so many startups. They have so many opportunities. And your investments in local startups this has triggered a lot of VCs coming up, a lot of venture capital funds coming up, angel investors coming up, growing. In fact, we are looking nowadays that more and more people, they want to become angel investors rather than founders. Because the way it is happening, and they are not going for traditional investments. They want to go for this investment in startups and get the returns. This is what is happening in this space. As regards corporate venture, what we talk about investments, why it is happening and why, what are the areas, what is the motivation for corporates to get into this? So I can talk only about our corporation in the oil, Hindustan Petroleum, why we got into this. Of course, there is a Startup India mandate. Our Honorable Prime Minister started this in 2016, and then 10 PSUs in the oil and gas sector got into that, and we have got our own startup policy. Our startup policy is, of course, we call it Udgam startup policy, and as on date, we have onboarded 22 startups on various sectors. We have defined focus areas. It can be AI, ML, it can be video analytics, it can be pipeline safety, climate, sustainability, alternate energy, e-mobility, all those areas, biofuel, all those we have identified. Some synergy with what we are doing right now, those sectors we have identified. So primarily objective is to back up the young startups, young entrepreneurs who are coming up from the ideation stage to just the beginning of formation of their dreams. So what we do is, our objectives I can clearly define. We want to strategically align with the relevant and emerging companies who are coming up, small companies, startups. Financial returns are not the main objectives. Basically, is to back up these startups so that they can come up, give them opportunity for POCs, for pilots. We have got a huge number of POC, SBUs in pipeline, in operation, in LPG bottling plants, in retail. So wherever there is an opportunity, we try to identify and give them POCs so they can prove their innovations. But at the same time, when we back up these startups, we fund these startups, we take equity stake in these startups. So somewhere there is back of the mind that yes, if in the near future and ahead, they can be possible acquisition also, we can take over and back them, take over those startups and all. And and we want to leverage these companies to improve our internal efficiencies. We identify those areas. We see they are the fastest mode of getting innovation inside and address those pain areas. And that is the reason we are getting into that. We want to reduce the cost of experimentation. So when they bring those ideas, concepts, that helps us. It helps us to decrease the time to market. Otherwise, in-house building and getting it will take a lot of time. And we get ready access to new technologies which the startups bring, and definitely the innovation. If you see the recent IHS market study globally, the oil and gas sectors in the first half of 2021, in fact, they went through 60 rounds, and huge investments that happened for innovation through the startup route. So it is happening globally, not in India. So this is the prime objective. Corporate sectors like us in the oil and gas trying to encourage startups and back them up. And prime objective is to, of course, focus on safety and customer delight. We bring those because of that and back these startups. So I just stop here for other speakers.
Sure, sir. Thank you so much. I think that was a very quite a, relevant context. I think there's more to this engagement in terms of corporate and startup beyond just the funding part is what you have outlined. I think the whole I'm so happy to hear that the corporates are looking at this as an engagement for innovation, and beyond innovation. Again, they're able to support the startup ecosystem and the next generation of entrepreneurs as an idea as well. Thank you so much, sir. And if I were to go to Mr. Aditya and take his views and as a banker and as a corporate, we are also familiar that HDFC as a corporation as well works extensively with startups, if you were to both wear the banking and the corporate hat, and then let us know what kind of engagement and what is the outlook towards startups from a banker or a side, sir?
Thank you to giving us the opportunity to be part of Confluence this year, and I'm happy to see the growing need for these kind of conferences are the need of the hour, and everybody needs it more from the other side, but from the entrepreneur side, it is what they come to a platform where they are able to interact with their peers, and also the other participants of the other value chain of the system. So it's a great idea, and hope this this continues. And coming to your question, see, I will tell you there is two basic fundamental difference between a corporate funding and a banking finance. So I will start with that, so that to give a perspective. So first fundamental difference is that the risk capital, or the corporates are having the money, they are putting up the money themselves, so they know their risk, and they are ready to take those risks basis the capital they have. So the risk capital base is one where as a banks would not be in a position, or will not have that free hand in taking those risks, just because we deal with public money. So we have to be slightly risk averse as far as on the funding side as well, compared to the say corporate or angel investor, or who himself is using his own capital to invest. So that is one fundamental difference. And second fundamental difference is we will as a bank, any bank will shy away from taking the equity side. We will not enter in any deal as an equity investor. We will not take any equity. We will more on a debt side, and we will try to help the startups in the debt side of the game. So that is the fundamental two difference, because 90% of the corporate funding which will happen would happen on the where the equity stake is being taken, or a combination of equity and debt. That kind of arrangement would be there. So that is two fundamental difference which I just wanted to bring on the table. Second is last 3 years or last 5 years have been very dynamic in terms of startup ecosystem as such. And there has been a lot of innovation, technologically good breakthrough has been made in this ecosystem, and people have come up with a lot of innovative ideas. And they as Mr. Kushal was telling, around 83 unicorns are already there in last year itself. Okay, and we are expecting that this number this year will at least double, if not go beyond it. So that is where the current situation is. And also as he also mentioned that, and I concur with him, money is not a problem. Capital, if the idea is good and scalable, in startup the basic thing is where the money is needed, and when the money is needed is what the the decision has to be taken, whether the startup wants to dilute the stake at what level, or they want to hold back their own equity to a larger extent, and when they want to dilute. So that is, but money, if the idea is good and is scalable, money will follow you. So that is it has been proven beyond anybody's doubt now. So money is not a scarcity. There are so many, international funds who are have dedicated India startup funds, who have billions of dollars only, who would be, putting up money in the startups arena only. And there are so many angel investors, which has homegrown angel investors who are putting up their money. Corporates like uh, represented by Mr. Banerjee. There are so many corporates uh, uh, who are doing these things in their ecosystem. They are helping startups to to innovate, wherein bring some efficiency in the value chain, so that everybody gets benefited. Same, even in banking, I can tell you that in banks, we are have contributed or invested in many startups, wherein we want some changes, or we see that there is some good startups who are working on the areas where banking system needs some innovation, and we are backing them. So there are a lot of investment has been done, not only by our bank. I'm telling, in the whole banking space. So in the whole banking space also, so every industry, it's not about the oil and gas field or banking, or any other uh, corporate entities. Everybody wants and are ready to put their money wherever they see that value is being created, or there is some efficiency. There are some new people bringing them some efficiency to the system, or there is some innovation which is going to help everybody in that value chain. So so money is not a problem currently. I will come to at the later part, is time permits, on the how debt or
We'll do that.
in financing part is done. But I just overview I was giving in this point, that money is not a issue. If you have a good idea, and it can be scalable, and if you are bringing something on the table, you will get the money.
Thank you so much, Mr. Aditya. And I think two interesting aspects that you highlighted. It's about creating value for stakeholders, and and the kind of and the scalability of the idea. Or rather, the problem that you're solving has to be large enough, and the money will follow you. And I think both of you gentlemen, Mr. Kushal and Mr. Aditya, have expressed this interesting point that money is not a problem, or there is enough money available. Must be music to all the startups who are on this call, to their ears. And I see Puneet smiling, and Puneet, must be music to your kind of ears when you hear bankers and corporates say, money is not a problem at all. And let us hear from you. What is that? From a startup side, when you engage a corporate, or you engage a banking partner, I mean banker, how do you look at those collaborations or investment opportunities from their side to a startup money, Puneet?
Yeah, thank you so much, Mr. Selvam, and thank you to the T-Hub Foundation for giving us an opportunity. I'm Puneet. I'm one of the co-founders of Kaleidofin, which is a neobank. We offer financial services to low-income households. The idea is that financial services have still not reached everybody in this country, even though we've made tremendous gains. And we are trying to make a contribution towards taking financial services to everybody. Like Mr. Selvam said, it's almost music to my ears. And I would say that there has been a very significant change that we've witnessed within the country. I also sit on the investment committee of the IITM incubation cell here. And we found actually several of the startups here managed to get money from some of the corporates. And oil PSUs are one of the biggest investors in some of these entities. So we've been seeing that there is some more participation on the equity side. But generally, if you were to ask me as an experience of an entrepreneur, I would say that Indian startup equity is just very, very hard to get. Even if you look at the numbers that Mr. Banerjee threw out in terms of total number of startups, the amount of money that Indian investors are able to put out to, let's say, fund 50,000, 60,000 startups is just a very, very small number as compared to what the requirements are. And the big challenge really is, and this is largely what I was kind of taking away from Mr. Jha as well, is that there comes a stage of life where raising equity starts to become easier. And when I say starts to become easier, I can clearly tell you it is never easy. But at least you have an idea that you can take to various investors. But when you are at the level of a startup entity, you still don't have an idea that has been executed. You're still going with something which is on paper. You're trying to start with giving out a minimum viable product. You're trying to explain what the idea could be. At that point of time, your idea itself is under question. And that is the time when you need investors to come in, give you money with a fewer number of questions. And I think that's basically still where a lot of challenge exists in this country. We have a lot of incubators now, which have been offering fantastic support, including what TIAB has been doing. But at the end of the day, there is just a dearth of investors out there when it comes to looking at raising money at the very, very, very beginning. So for a finance firm, for example, and I saw a question in the question and answer tab as well, which is that if you are a pre-startup, a pre-revenue entity, how do you go get money from a bank which is managing public funds? How do they give money to you without collateral? And these are all challenges. And it becomes a bit of a chicken and an egg to say that you can't raise the money unless you prove an idea, and you can't prove an idea unless and until you have the money to be able to go and execute on the ground. But having said that, I would say at least I have seen a lot of movement. It's very interesting to see that several corporates have been participating in this. The entire environment of being able to set up a company in India is becoming easier and easier, but it's not easy enough, is what I would stop here at this point.
Great. Thank you, Puneet. I think you're right. I mean, it is, what I hear you say, Puneet, is that everybody is ready to get onto a running train, and who will give the initial push and get it started and pushed. That's something a little bit of a challenge still in the early stages for startups, and that's when they really need it, right? Great. That actually brings to a very interesting question to Mr. Kushal, and maybe even Mr. Aditya eventually. If you look at sir, what Mr. Kushal, what stage of the startup journey that typically a corporate like yours would like to get starting, having conversations with, what stage of the startup, and how do you really what kind of evaluations you look at, and what are the broad contours of the whole engagement, sir?
Yeah, thank you once again, and interesting views from all the fellow panelists. And as regards money is concerned, or the infusement of capital is concerned, it depends on what stage you are getting into. As you are asking about the stage, so there are primarily 4 different stages. Like when you talk about the seed stage, where the crowdfunding and family resources and funds and all those things are roped in. Then there comes the early stage where the angel investors, and that is again that stage. In fact, early stage, when we say, it is right from seed funding to Series A. That entire space we talk about early stage, and that is a space where we get into, because that is a time, that is the phase where these startups, a sort of existential support is needed. In fact, when startups are seeking funds, they're seeking funds at that stage where there is a question of existence, and there we need to come in and back them up and support them so that they get stabilized, they get their MVP and get ready to go to market stage and become a sort of viable. So we are trying to get into that stage. As regards money, which is, the flowing and it is there in the system, that basically is coming at next stages. Basically, I personally feel that comes in the growth stage and the later stage. For that space, people are ready with funds, and they want to do the risk mitigations. Everything is at good space, so they want to come with funds now. But I was reading one article of Mr. Neeraj Singh, who must be aware of Spinning, the second-hand car actually platform, and Right now, we huge investment he got from General Catalyst, who has already invested in US and Europe, that space. So what he says in Bloomberg Quint, he was talking and telling that we were looking for a fund of 43 million. Okay, and he was getting offers to take the round to 150 million, whereas he was looking for 43 million. So he was very surprised. He is telling that it is tempting, but we realize that we don't require that money because we have not planned for it. And one thing what he told very clearly and came out very nicely, that we are not looking for investors who just bring in capital, but they bring domain expertise as well. So we were looking for that sort of investors. So here comes, I mean, the startup role. I mean, startup as well as the investors. Startup uh, main focus should be growth, not profitability. To get some early money or get some 2-3 rounds of funding and then exit or make some money. That should not be the criteria. I mean, growth of the company has to be very, very vital. Same with the investors, they should not suffer from FOMO, fear of missing out. So let's come invest something. Then you wipe 40, take 100 million, this million. So that should not also happen from the investor side. Right due diligence, because we are seeing as corporates very fast. Earlier used to take 15 days, 20, a month at least, a proper legal, technical, financial due diligence. Now we're coming up with the due diligence in 5 days, 6 days, and they're asking for the money. So there one has to be careful and what sort of things are happening there. So that is the space we have to be careful about. But yes, funds, what is happening, at what stage is coming, these are very, very vital. And when we talk about these funds, when we are funding these startups and look for those startups, some of the aspects what we are looking for is very, very critical. One is the uniqueness, the novelty of the product and the scalability. I mean, it cannot be a me too product, something like that, or sort of experiments or R&D sort of thing. It has to have some novelty and definitely scalability. Then, very important aspect of the startup is the team. We definitely get to look into the team. What exactly is the team like, and the team competence, and how are they going to take up, and are they full time or is it part time sort of thing as an activity? Those are very, very important. And of course, the degree of planning, what they're doing, their business plan, the coming 4 or 5 years, where they want to take it, the financial risks, and of course the competitive advantage, the IPs, and all those they have tried. So these are the areas we try to look at.
Absolutely.
And where we see yes, there are scope, there is a novelty there. The full team is fully dedicated and working on those areas. No thought process like to get fast money or get some 3-4 rounds. Now you're seeing a lot of trends towards IPO. So moves towards the IPO state, get towards the huge funding and all those things aspects we try to measure. We have got our own team, investment team, and venture team who works on all those areas. And wherever there is a seriousness of purpose is there, we definitely jump in, we get into there and back all the young entrepreneurs. We join hands with them and bring them on board. So this is a
Wonderful.
when we talk about fundings.
Wonderful. So the three key interesting observations you have made. So I think one is there's a definitely there is some amount of traction that has been to be proven in the marketplace is what you're saying. And that's when the corporates would like to kind of come in and further support and take forward. That I think that's one thing I'm hearing from you saying. Second is also the whole the due diligence part, the kind of the fundamentals of the company have to be very strong, and the novelty of the idea or the problem that they're solving has to be very significantly differentiated. And the third aspect is to also see using just not money, but we are it's more and more a partnership of sorts. That's is what you want to take it through rather than just putting money for money's sake, right? I think that's wonderful. Mr. Aditya, if you were to kind of look at it from a banker's perspective, and kind of take maybe take on Puneet's point and say, hey, it's how do we really get to get funding for startups in the initial stages, in the challenging times. I always say first 1,000 days are very critical for a company, and those 1,000 days, how do you look at that funding or any kind of financing options, Mr. Aditya?
So, Mr. Puneet was absolutely correct, and that was the my opening remark as well. So, you just have to look at it from a banker's perspective. I am not having my own money, using my own money. I am uh, using depositors' money, so I will be risk averse, and that's where the problem is. You are right that the initial problem of seed funding, okay, is the problem. And to be very frank with you, I was there was a government of India discussion happened when they were to launch this their initiative on startup India seed funds. So they had some discussion with the bankers as well before that came in, and they wanted that how whether bankers can be part of it and all those stuff. And bankers collectively, I'm not saying which banker, but
Organization, yeah.
yeah, as an organization, we went there that we told them what are the problems and on the banking side to get into it. We all hear the all the good stories. There are so many unicorns and so many good startups. There is also a reality that so many startups which were who started but could not go beyond a certain level, and that is also a true story. So uh, having said so, so we in our representations as well, we told the government that that initiative, the seed funding initiative, has to come from the government side. Then it enthuse the banker to put his money. So that was the initial discussion. And then government of India, everybody now knows that there is a startup seed fund which they have brought in, and now there is fund of funds as well of 10,000 crores which they have announced, which is there. And there is a very good part in these initiatives. I would suggest is that at least they have there is a document which clearly says what is the criteria of evaluation, how it will how they will take decision. At least there is a clarity. How I am not I will not in a position to comment on how it is going on, because but some startups who would have gone through it, they will tell you. But at least as on the documentation stage, it looks very good, to be very frank. So as a banker, if you ask me, it's not that we are not. I can tell you some 3-4 examples without taking names, because it is professionally not right, that we have funded two startups at the incubation stage, IIT incubation. There is a IIT incubation, and through them we entered some relationship. And I'm very happy to tell you that both of them, which we entered, are clocking a more than 150 crores of turnover in 4 years. And we just, because that space, the space, that is where what Mr. Kushal was saying, or Puneet would be agreeing that the thing is the product. If the product is uh, good, if there is an opportunity to scale it up, if there is the innovation is there, or something new is being brought, and which is not there currently, people will back, even bankers will back. I am telling you those and this is not two examples, I can tell you 10 more, but then I'm giving you a good example wherein we started at a incubation stage, and we see the fruit, or we see them grow. Okay. So but having said so, if you ask me as a banker, what will be the stage in which I will be more comfortable to fund or fund a startup, obviously it will be post the prototype stage, or for that matter, where you are ready with your product, you have tested it, and now you want to scale it up. That is the stage where as a debt partner I can enter, just because then I know this the product, and how what is the requirement in the market of that product. So from there I have a visibility as a banker. I'm saying, just because I don't once again I want to tell everybody the reason of that is I am not having my own money, which I'm putting in. I'm using depositors money, so I will be risk averse. At least I have seen the product, so I can take that call beyond that. So that is my view. But having said so, we are also, now government of India has asked corporates that they can use CSR funds towards startups. So I can tell you that our bank is doing that. We have earmarked around 20 crores towards of our CSR funds towards the startup. So we are doing it, and our internal thinking is that we will take it forward in the next year to a next level by seeing how this goes. So from the bank side, two things. One, we are ready, we are okay to fund, but we will be slightly more risk averse than say a corporate who is putting up his own money. That is the only difference.
Yeah, I think you're right, sir. I think it understandably so, because end of the day you are managing public money, and you would have to balance between your responsibility towards that and the kind of investments that you can make. Having said that, Puneet, if you could come back and let us know what, especially when you're engaging with corporates, I mean, beyond money, what are the other things that the startup should look for? Is it, that's something that's equally important, isn't it? And if you were to look at from a startup perspective, what are those expectations the startup would have from corporate? Even if I were to, I mean, HDFC is a bank, but it's a corporate bank. It's a corporate by itself, and so is HPCL. So when you engage with some brands like this, what kind of expectations should have, or what kind of conversation should a startup have just beyond money?
Sorry about that, I was on mute. I think what you're saying, Mr. Selvam, is that this is again another interesting avenue for all the startups out there. And I would say that this is something that all of us are always working on. There are several entities which are engaged in some kind of a B2B business, in which case a lot of corporates anyway become the main business segment that we are all working towards. In several other cases, tie-ups with a B2B partner to create B2B2C businesses becomes equally interesting to see if we can leverage some of their channels, some of the touch points that they have. HPCL, for example, has a very, very large number of petrol stations that people can start to look at. But I would say that the overall point of whether you're talking about equity or whether you're talking about engagement with a corporate, I think it comes back again to the same issue of what can a startup really get out of this. I think the simple point is, when you're a very, very small entity, when your idea is not out there proven, even to take an idea and sell it to an extremely large corporate becomes extremely hard. Even getting meetings with a senior person to be able to pitch your idea at the right level, for somebody to take a call to say, yes, this is interesting, we'd like to make this change, is extremely, extremely hard. Even if I were to kind of put this question to Mr. Banerjee to say how many people in the entity would be, let's say, be able to take a call on saying what can be done on HPCL outlets. And the number of people who could take that decision is very small, and it's not easy for an average person to be able to go out there and make a pitch. And I'm sure hundreds of people are making that pitch on a daily basis in any case. So the overall challenge still remains. But I would actually take a pause here and say that to all the startups who are watching this, is that please don't take it as there is no hope out there. I would say that, yes, you've all spoken about the fact that you need to prove your idea, you need to have teams, you need to be able to do this. But I think all of us came to this particular space knowing that there will be situations where we'll be tested. We will have to prove ourselves. And if it was easy, if people would hand over opportunities to us on a platter, then there would be, entrepreneurs would be not very different from everybody else in the planet. A true entrepreneur basically takes it up and says that I can actually deliver despite all of these challenges. And that is what makes you succeed. That's what ends up creating the kind of value that everybody is putting money for. So please don't lose heart. I would also say that this is not a popularity contest. You do not need all 100 corporates or all 50 people that you pitch to write a check to you or to like you. What you need is one of those 50 to say that, yes, I like your idea and I'm going to back your idea. So go out there, don't stop pitching, pitch to 50 people, pitch to 70 people, pitch to the same people repeatedly, because you never know when this is going to work. At the end of the day, one of the most important jobs for an entrepreneur out there is to keep knocking on the doors on a repeated basis to be able to make sure that you can make it work. At the same time, your idea is everything. You cannot go with a half-baked idea. You have to have clarity of thought in terms of your idea to be able to take this to many, many entities. And I would largely, if I were to add here, Mr. Silvam here, is that the first part is there is always some benefit to be able to associate with somebody who's an incubator or somebody who's a startup specialist fund. Because the entire learning curve that you manage to cover in terms of making pitches to corporates, either for business or for equity, or taking your business to scale, you learn so much from the experiences of others, which you can actually get through these entities. And I would say that this is something that I would very, very strongly recommend to everybody out there. Mr. Zanam, I know I didn't answer your question exactly, but I just didn't want to leave at a thought where we were kind of dismissing the entire piece of equity too quickly. And I would say that at least from my experience of engaging with startups who have taken money from entities like IOC, HPCL, I would say that it's fantastic the kind of support that they've offered to entities. They've actually worked with entities which are at a very, very kind of initial stage of life as well. As long as the person has an idea thought out quite well, they've actually supported a lot of these initiatives, especially if they were connected to engineering. I've been connected to IIT Madras Incubation Center. So a lot of these were engineering-based ideas, and they've got a big support from entities like them in the past.
Thank you, Puneet. I think
permission, Mr. Selvan, I just want to add what my fellow speakers are just now told.
Sure. Please.
One thing is, yes, we know the startup success rate and percentage. Maybe out of 7, 8 startup out of 10 or 6 startups might not progress beyond certain stage. That has to be known. But when we, in fact, even HPCL is also handling public money. It is a government sector. So that we also keep the same thing in mind. But there is a difference between your investment in core areas and your investment in explore areas. So this is the explore area. So the financial benchmark set for the core areas, the capex for that area has to be different from this area. So that has to be brought out, and things have to be discussed in house when you talk about investment in startups. Maybe as I was trying to say, like, let us invest through AI fund, or let us invest through fund of fund. There are corporates like State Banks, Union Bank, StateB, who are investors. I have seen in IV Cap and other fund of funds, and all. Through them they're investing in the startups. So probably we have to look for opportunities to bring down the risk when you talk about invest in startups. And if you talk about seed funding and your early stage funding, is a huge boom. In fact, last year 62 million was raised in 42 deals. I'm talking about the seed stage. Then early stage funding rose to 296 million in the first half of ongoing fiscal. So it is happening. It's going on. As ease of approach, ease of connect to the startups, we have our online system. 24/7, round the year it is open. Any startup can put up their solutions. We definitely call them for pitch. If it is in line with our listed areas are there in the portal, they can look into that. If it's falling in that, we definitely call them for pitch, screening, and found suitable, we join hands with them for taking forward. So that sort of support, everything is there available for all these young entrepreneurs, and we are always there to back them up. I just want to tell
Thank you, sir. I think what I'm hearing, Puneet and Mr. Aditya and all of you, I think one of the important point is we're seeing similar stuff. One is that the merit of the idea is much more important than where the money is coming from. I mean, I think Puneet, I really appreciate you bringing that point in perspective. There is a significant amount of support that is available for through incubators and through accelerators in the initial stage, where they may be having challenges with a different kind of investor. But the truth is, at any point in time, I think what all of you are saying is two things. One is the merit of the idea, the ability of the idea to be executed well, and the scalability, and the kind of, I think that pretty much is true for any investor. I think the hedging may be a little different from a banker to a completely a startup investor. But the truth is that any investor would look for some of the fundamentals being right from the startup's perspective. And thank you for putting that in perspective, Mr. Kushal, as well. I think I'm glad you brought out some statistics, and those are encouraging numbers as well, and they're only going to go up. So we are kind of nearing the final conclusions of this conversation. So before we kind of break to the question and answer session with the participants, I'm looking at a kind of a closing remark, and this could be some pros and cons. From a corporate perspective, what are the advantages and what are kind of the disadvantages that is associated with getting with the funding from a corporate side, sir. And maybe we'll go one round on that, and then we can kind of go into the question and answer session. And we spoke about the upside. Any challenges that the corporate funding brings to the startups perspective? Maybe I'll start with Puneet.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Selvam. So I think the big concern that at least I would have in terms of getting money from corporates, and I would say that the concern comes slightly secondary. I think the first important part for any startup is to be able to get a like-minded investor. And if you are getting a like-minded investor, I would say that all the concerns start to take a backseat. The big concern that typically I have faced whenever I have dealt with corporate investors, and I would say from corporate investors, I'll take it very quickly to strategic investors, because normally when a corporate is taking money out to make an equity investment in another company, it's effectively trying to do something which will further its business over a period of time. Otherwise, it should be kind of expected that if you have the money to invest, you like to reinvest in your own businesses. So the strategic intent, I think, starts to become a little bit of a challenge. What I have seen in my negotiations in the past has been that there have been lots of clauses around exclusivity that have been demanded. There have been a lot more challenges in trying to bring other competing entities on board. And this has especially been true when we've dealt with financial services sector, where somebody would see us as a channel to distribute, let's say, insurance products or distribute their own banking products, and exclusivity becomes a bit of a challenge. And as you're at an initial stage of life, some of these exclusivity contracts can start to impact your future revenues, the kind of negotiations that you can have in terms of the overall revenue sizes. So I would say that is something that I would always keep in mind as I look at entities which are becoming strategic investors. A corporate investor who's acting purely as a financial investor, I would say is fantastic. They have balance sheet funding, they have no pressure on exit. But if the corporate funding comes with a strategic intent, then I would say that that's one thing to look at. Other than that, I would say really nothing else that comes to mind.
Wonderful. I think that's pretty fair, Puneet. I think you're right. I mean, there may be certain clauses around exclusivity that may, in the initial stages, especially in the growth, and they want to spread out to newer venues or newer markets, they may be having some challenges. I think that's fair, and I think it's good to put these conversations on the table while you know what you're getting into, both for the corporate as well as the startup. So I think the clarity and of communication is very important in this kind of situations. Thank you so much, Puneet. And Mr. Kushal, if you can help me with how
I can carry on with what Puneet was telling.
Please. That's why I came to you. Yeah.
Like as a corporate investor, I can just give few comparative study with. One is your corporate investor. I personally feel corporate investor strategic intent will be much better than who's coming only for financial investment, because we have seen corporate investors just giving grant and forgetting about that startup. That's not the way. As regards we are concerned, we think our role after giving the funding is to completely handhold, mentor, give the startup all support in-house, give the pilot opportunities, POCs in-house, cross the SBUs, then give him industry connect in this sector, outside this sector, giving financial connect so that he grows up and gets into go-to-market stage. So that's the reason just giving fund and forgetting probably will not do that. But once we have got equity there, we are already involved in his growth and giving all the support, incubation support, mentoring support, all those things happen. So probably that way we look into it and such as isn't there are in our own oil and gas who are giving just grants, but we believe in giving that sort of strategic investment and that sort of support. There is a big difference between CVC, that is corporate venture capital, and your independent capital is what we are talking about. We believe in strategic value creation as I was talking of the startups, whereas the individual VCs primary objective is financial return. 2x, how much X you will give me after so many years. That is not the purpose in case of this corporate. And our investment tenure, when you talk about, is medium term to long term. We don't fix any tenure within this time it has to happen or returns have to happen. Whereas in case of VCs, they look for 5 to 10 years or maybe lesser than that to get that. And fund management experience is much better when you talk about this. Corporate industry expertise is there, business network is there. There are channels for the customers, for the startups, so they get those benefits that will not be happening here. And there is no question of we don't talk about profit share or management fees and all those things that are happening in our case. So that is the thing. I mean, there is a difference which is happening in case of if you are getting into strategic investment, but with a purpose, different purpose, intention, that is definitely going to happen, benefit your all the startups. And that's the route actually we take. That's the reason we go for strategic investments.
Thank you, sir. I think that's true. In almost
and I just let me tell you, there is no exclusivity clause. We don't latch on to their IPs. We only insist that IP should belong to the company, not the founders. Because if any of the founder goes, it goes. The IP also goes. The IP should be with the company, and we don't have any interest in getting into that IP and all. But we always back this startup.
You back the company, the organization.
Company, yeah.
Great. So I think that's a very, I think, to my mind, it's like in any new area that is evolving, somebody is more mature than some and another. I think different organizations at a different level of maturity are able to think beyond just exclusivity. And I'm glad Mr. Kushal kind of outlined what the mandate or the way HPCL looks at this initiative. I think thank you for putting out, sir. How about Aditya? I mean, Aditya, if I can, I know debt is, there are some questions, but I'll just take it as one of your closing remarks. Debt versus equity, somebody is as a dilemma in the early stages of startup life. What is your suggestions, or how do you look at that perspective?
See, I will tell you that initially I'm and I will be very honest. 5 years or around 2015 and before that, when the startup system was not that mature, I have seen, and now some of those startups have become grown-up companies, and the promoters. The biggest problem those promoters have that I sold early. I could have waited. And that on hindsight, there are two ways of looking at it. One, on hindsight, always you feel like that when you see that I could have waited. And there, second, genuinely there is a issue. What happened is, I can tell you, I have so many examples wherein that time they were getting money, as Mr. Kushal was also telling. Somebody wanted a 43 million and somebody come with a bigger paycheck, and you are at times you don't think through it, or don't think you think that I can grow faster than maybe what I have anticipated. At times that is where people take a decision which is, at a later stage they in a way they cry about it, or they feel that it was a wrong decision because they sold out early, so they sold out cheap. So that is a very that is a very critical stage, and that is what all the startups should think. How much I want uh, at a certain level. You may get a bigger check, but whether you need that check at this point in juncture. Okay, because valuation will keep evolving once your business stabilizes, it grows, and uh, then you can always cover your backlog if you feel so. But thing is, how what is the cost you have paid for that? So that, but having said that, so uh, I would today the I see that most of the investors and startup people are more mature. The data is on the table, they know things, and there are information flowing. So I feel that today people are more uh, I would say educated to these aspects vis-a-vis say 5 years 6 years before. So I am talking from the customer point of view, the customers who feel that they have sold early, and they have lost on some opportunity in the bargain.
Thank you so much, Aditya. I think the success of any such discussions is that the merit of the knowledge that is being shared is amazing. I think this is all of you come from very different backgrounds and different, and that's the beauty of this kind of a platform where each of us can put forth our perspective and still learn from others what is happening and what is not. Right. Once again, before we break for a Q&A, if Shankar, if you can take on from here, I once again thank you, all the three gentlemen, Mr. Kushal, Mr. Aditya, and Mr. Puneet, for taking your time out of your schedules and sharing this wonderful, valuable insights on funding and funding corporate related funding related conversation. Thank you so much. And Shankar, if you are,
Yeah.
if you can hear me, I can take
Yeah,
some questions.
we'll allow Gopal. Gopal, please go ahead with your question. Gopal, you have to unmute yourself and then go ahead with the question. Okay. We'll take Mr. Sridhar. Mr. Sridhar, please go ahead with your question.
Hi, good evening all. Can you hear me, sir?
Yes, can you hear Mr.
Yeah, my question will be to the Puneet sir. Sir, thank you very much for pointing out the right question, right problem, which generally most of the startups fail. So, are you aware of any platforms like from the corporate where they can validate the idea? Every startup may need not have funding need, but they need right mentoring to take that idea, to convert that idea into a product. They may need technology support or through the right connects. Like in my fintech idea, I need support from Massachusetts University, but that company is closed. I don't know. I want to capture the thumb impression using optical light. I don't know whom to approach.
Right. So that I would say, Sridhar, at least in terms of, in my experience, I think a lot of entities exist out there who you can reach out to. I am a part of various fintech forums. And what we've actually done is created a little bit of a peer group where if you have a challenge, you post it for them. And I think all of us have gone through the journey where we've solved some similar problems. And I have found that peer groups become very interesting. If you're able to get into, let's say, working relationship with a corporate who's already working in your field by either becoming their banking correspondent or by signing them on as your sponsor bank, then you also get an ability to work with their tech teams. And I would say that a lot of these problems get so co-solved. For example, I work with ICICI Bank on a payment solution. And I can tell you that it took us a lot of time to convince them that they should start to work with us. But once that happened, their teams have collaborated with us quite a bit. to be able to solve for newer problems. We got support of their tech teams, their compliance teams, to be able to understand both regulatory challenges as well as technology challenges to be able to work on this. It became a natural thing because there were business interests that got aligned. But peer groups help a lot. I would say you're able to cover a lot more topics with a peer group as opposed to a single corporate to that extent.
Thank you, Sridhar, for the question. You can also reach out to T-Hub, and we will, I'm sure our team will be happy to support you and get you connected to whatever support you need. And yeah, Shankar, one more question.
Yeah, we'll take one more. Jyotsna, please go ahead with your question.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. And it was really an insightful session. I have got 3 questions. My situation is I have a startup brand called Event Needs. It's a 1.5-year-old, primarily 1-year-old company. I got an interest from a Californian hedge funding company. They are willing to invest $2 million, but they're asking close to 10 to 15% of the company. My first question is whether we should consider going for an investor abroad, or look for an investor, because abroad investor will not definitely be a strategic partner. They can't help us apart from just giving money. So should we consider that as one option, or look out for the investors within India who can help me get the traction that I'm looking for? Number one. Number two, I have approached a few of the government grant incubators who are handling government funds, but they are looking out to seek some stake in the company. So is it the normal norm? Third thing is, should I go for a debt with my strategic plan of expansion in place, or should I look for diluting my equity?
I think probably I'll have 3 of them answer those 3 questions. Mr. Kushal, if you were to take one of those questions.
I can address probably the first 2, what Jyotsna was asking, and outside investment, what looking for. I mean, it's coming from outside. This all will depend on what is your funding need. As I was earlier also talking about, at what stage your startup is, and what is your funding need? Are you looking for big ticket investment for expansion, or you are just in the initial growth stage where the VC funds or local investors will work out? So then you have to look. In case you are in a later stage, then the bank loans or equities or PE funds, all those areas come. So it depends on your funding need. Basically, that you decide. And the other thing is the stake in the company. It depends. I mean, you have to see the term sheet and the shareholder agreement. What does it state? What are the reserve rights, and what are those areas they are talking about when they're trying to stake equity in your startup? And what is the things they will be controlling? And all those areas you have to look into once you go through the SHA and the shareholding agreement and the term sheets. That will give you a clear idea whether to go for it or not to go for it.
Yes, sir. I've got the term sheet, but
I'm sure we can connect offline.
We will, sir.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
If I can ask Mr. Aditya to kind of take a question on debt versus equity again.
So, ma'am, to be very frank, you have said you have already done 1 year of business is there. So I think you can even look at debt. If you don't want currently go beyond or dilute your stake, you can just look at debt as well at this point as well. Just because if it is more than 1 year, there will be banks and there will be startup funding which banks are doing today. So you can approach banks, any bank, including us, and we can really look at it.
Thank you, Mr. Aditya.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, Puneet, peer-to-peer suggestion.
Yeah, Jyotsna, congratulations on getting such a wonderful term sheet. I don't know if you've raised money in the past or not, and what your valuation expectations are. But I would say that at a starting level, if you're getting valued between 100 to 150 crore rupees, that's a great valuation. Congratulations. 10 to 15% dilution is not significantly high. It leaves a lot for you. And I again don't know your burn rate, so I don't know what this 15 crores of money that you'll raise in 2 million tranche, how much does it kind of take you to, what kind of a stage or revenues can you cross? I would say money is good. Money in the bank is fantastic because it gives you a lot of firepower, it gives you a lot of stuff to be able to build up. The fact that you'll still be at least 85% Indian money, don't worry about foreign money versus Indian money, unless and until you're in a super restricted sector where you think Indian money makes a lot of difference, but 10 to 15% dilution is really not that complex when it comes to foreign shareholders. When it comes to mentoring support, I would still say that getting a good board